Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Honorable Miss Hanna Shcholokova. As a PhD in Political Science, Associate Professor of International Economy Relation and Regional Study Department from University Custom and Finance, today's session is being streamed on the Universitas STEKOM YouTube channel, and I will read our agenda for this afternoon. First, we will start with class presentation by Miss Hanna and continue with the Q&A session, time for picture and the closing. Okay, let's begin for the class today. For Miss Hanna, the time is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Greetings from Dnipro. Let me please begin. I'm sharing my screen. Could you please give me permission for sharing my screen? Because
Oh, yes. Fabrico host. Just a moment, please. Hanna. Yeah, already, miss.
Yeah, everything okay, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So full screen. Topic of my lecture you have already mentioned, national peculiarities of business communication. Can you hear me well, yeah? Okay, thank you. So again, greetings from snowy Dnipro in University of Customs and Finance. I'm Associate Professor of International Economic Relations Department. And let me shortly introduce myself. As I have already mentioned, I have PhD in political science. And I want to say that, you know, the topic of today's lecture is very interesting and very important for me, communication, yeah? And I can say that all my scientific activity is connected with communication in some way. If we take my PhD political science, yeah, again, it's connected with communication because topic of my PhD was connected, with political language, again, one of the form of communication. And I also have experience in developing a lot of courses connected with communication. You can see the list of my courses on the screen. Yeah, it's international business communication, cross-cultural communication, and also it's connected with some aspects of international marketing, like international PR, international advertising, and also some different aspects of mediation as a very important procedure and very popular one. Also, of course, it's connected with communication. So let's start our today lectures. Cross-cultural communication, business communication. Is it important or not very? Dear participants, can I ask you to join discussion, or it's not very comfortable for you? Can we discuss something during our lecture or no? I suppose it will be more interesting for you to take part in short discussion, or maybe you can write in chat if you wish. Dear participants, what do you think? Can we do it? We can shortly discuss what is your opinion, yeah, cross-cultural communication. Is it important or not very? What do you think? Maybe you can write in chat if you wish. Okay, so let's continue. So cross-cultural communication, I can say that it's really important one. Even I can say it is strategically important because of a lot of different reasons. First of all, because of globalization, yeah, and all reasons you can see on the screen, like growth of global business, growth of technology, and the internet is connected with globalization. That's why we can say that cross-cultural communication, it's like objective reality now, and we should adapt to it. It's not easy, but you know, it's interesting. I can say, and we can say it is maybe challenging, but very useful. Again, if we take our today's workplace, yeah, again, because of globalizations and other reasons, we can say that it's rapidly, becoming vast as the business environment expands to include various geographic location and, of course, numerous culture. Yeah, if we are talking about national peculiarities of business communication, first of all, of course, I mean cultural factor. Yeah, and I suppose you know that. We will discuss it today in detail. Yes, that our communication is heavily influenced by our culture. Yeah, it's like glasses through which we see our world. That's why it's so important, and in business communication too. Yeah, so it can be difficult, however, it's important to understand each other. We are from different countries here, and today's communication is a good example of cross-cultural communication. And again, it can be challenging, but it's also interesting. And of course, it's connected very much with internet and other modern technologies, because it's opened up new marketplaces that allow to promote businesses to new geographic locations and culture. And again, if we take our today's meeting, yeah, we are communicating remotely. And again, it's a good example of such remote communication. And also we need cross-cultural skills in this situation. And nowadays we have more and more opportunities to work with people remotely. And again, it's a factor of increasing of cross-cultural communication importance. If we take language matters, yeah, you know, it's like not my own goal of today's lecture to discuss languages differences. My main idea to discuss cultural differences, yeah, is the main is the main peculiarity of business communication of different countries. But just show very little simple example, yeah. English, we can say that English is a global language. Dear colleagues, dear participants, do you agree that English can be named as global language? Maybe you can write in chat if you wish, or say, do you agree? Maybe you can put plus if you agree that English is really global language, or maybe minus if you don't agree. Could you please write in chat if you don't mind? So I suppose we can agree that English really global language, but nevertheless, why I'm asking? Because, you know, we can say, oh, thank you very much for your feedback. It's very important to have feedback in communication. You know, we'll discuss today what is communication. If there is no feedback, it's not very effective communication. That's why I will try to involve you in discussion, if you don't mind, okay? Maybe through chat, or you can say something by raising your hand and so on, okay? So if we take English language, it's really, we can say, they say, and I agree with scientists and practitioners, that English is really a global language. And there is a question, okay, if English is global language, maybe is everything okay for native English speakers? Yeah, because they understand everything, there is no language issues at all. But even for native English speakers, cross-cultural communication can be an issue, because again, different countries, yeah, it can be like classical example, British English and American English, yeah. That's why it can be different dialects and so on. Even for native English speaker, if we take language issue, yeah, cross-cultural communication can be challenging. Again, my main idea, not to afraid you that everything is very difficult, but the main idea, it's very interesting, yeah, communicate with representatives from different countries, because we are exchanging our experience, our worldview, yeah, and in this case, it's interesting very much as from my point of view. So it's like our first conclusion. I suppose you agree with it, that in this new world, globalized world, yeah, it's objective reality, effective cross-cultural communication is a must. It's something that we should have. And one more very important term, I suppose you have heard about this term, cultural diversity. Yeah, you know, all over the world, we have a lot of different countries, and of course they differ. Yeah, because of history, because of traditions, and because of a lot of different factors. But the main idea is that all cultures are equal in their rights. Yeah, and we should promote all culture. And it's interesting and it's really important that such cross-cultural communication enrich us. Yeah, we have new experience, as I have already mentioned, during communication with foreigners. That's why this concept of cultural diversity is the main idea of effective cross-cultural communication. You know, if put it simply, we should understand peculiarities of our own culture, yeah, and we should respect other culture, respect our own culture, and respect culture of other countries. It's the better way of cross-cultural communication. But one of the aspects, I'm sorry, of respect is to know this culture, yeah, to pay attention to features of other countries, cultures of these countries. And our today's lecture, it's a kind of such process, yeah, when we are going to know something interesting about other countries. So we can say that learning the basics about culture, it's important one. But again, we should mention, yes, that it's rather tricky area which we are involved in, because even if we take such simple process as greetings, yeah, you know, there can be different greetings in different countries. Even another example on this slide, physical contact, yeah. We will discuss today that there are so-called touch cultures or countries with touch cultures, yeah, and other ones where it's not appropriate touch people, which you know, which there, if there are no our relatives or maybe doctor and something like that, yeah. But if you take, for example, Brazil as a country, yeah, for them it's normal to have close distance between them, yeah, and that's why we can say that Brazil is a classical example of touch country, yeah, country with touch culture. And another examples of such differences, kissing, you know, in business communication. What do you think? It's appropriate kissing or air kissing, yeah? It's appropriate for business culture, or it's more common for, you know, your communication with friends, with relatives? Do you have any ideas? It's appropriate idea, kissing, air kissing in business communication. I suppose you know well, yes, that if we take such countries as France, yeah, with friends, okay, in our country, in Ukrainian, I mean with friends, I agree with you. I suppose in Indonesian culture, it's also with friends, or it's appropriate air kissing with your colleagues, dear participants. I suppose it's not very appropriate for your culture too, yeah? It's the same situation we have with the United States, but again, if we take France, they do have such culture, and you know, it's interesting. I have even watched video, it was like a guide about air kissing in France business communication. They like teach foreigners how to do it. So again, it's rather, as for me, interesting example for cultural differences. And if we take another very simple example, handshake, you know, I suppose everything heard about firm, very firm handshake in the United States, you know, and for them it's normal. For other countries, such firm handshake, it's not a good idea. So it depends. Cross-cultural communication, business communication, is it easy? We have already begun to answer this question. It's not very easy. And there is a question for you, dear participants. If you don't mind, let's try to answer this question. If we take kimonos, the traditional special occasion attire in Japan, are only worn by women. It's true or false? What do you think? Is it only women attire, or it's also men can also wear this attire? Do we have any ideas? Maybe you can write in chat if you wish. So the right answer is false. It's not. Oh, I have feedback in chat. It's false because you can see that if we take such specific occasion as weddings, funeral, graduation, tea ceremonies, and other special occasions, the kimono is robe worn by both men and women. But of course, they differ in structure. So the right answer is false. No, it was my idea to get such example here, because maybe the first answer, of course, true. It's just women attire, women dress, but nevertheless, it's interesting that men can also do it. And let's take another example, Italy. Let's move to Europe. In Italy, mums and roses are favorite flowers, to take when invited to dinner. If we take roses, classical flower, and mums, is it appropriate to take these flowers if you are invited to dinner? What do you think? Could you please say or write it's true or false? What do you think? Okay, we have, you are right, it's false. There is explanation, because in Italy, these flowers, they are funeral flowers. And again, if we take roses, mums and roses especially, it's classical, like as I have already said, classical flower in Ukraine also, But in Italy, it's not a good idea to take these flowers to positive events, we can say. Next one, in which country would showing up half an hour late for an invitation be considered rude? What do you say? Greece, Switzerland, Panama, Guinea? Do you have? I suppose it's easy question, because this country has image of very strict country when they do everything in time. Do you have any ideas which country from this list it can be? Here it's Switzerland. I'm sorry, you are right. And again, it's interesting example of different attitude to time. Again, there are different countries with different cultures. For one country, is not a good idea to be late. We have already seen this example, Switzerland. But again, it's interesting if we take opposite countries which are not so strict about time. It's not very good idea to be, for example, a half of hour before meeting. They think that it's rude. If we take another country like Greece or Latin American country, it's not a good idea to be, for example, as I have already mentioned, sometime before meeting. It's opposite example. If you're having dinner with a business partner in Argentina, when it is appropriate to talk business? No, you can just write A, B, C, or D. Do you have any ideas? As soon as you sit down at the table, after some polite table conversation, after the meal is through, and never. We shouldn't talk business during having dinner. What do you just, could you please write or say A, B, C, or D, and then we will discuss the right answer. Okay, the right answer is B. Due to their traditions, it's a good idea to talk business while having dinner, but it's not just at the beginning of this dinner, but after some polite table conversation. So relationships are important. Why we have such situation? Because for them, it's for this culture, I mean Argentina, it's important to build relationship. For example, if you take another country like Germany, rules and formal relations are more important for them than relationships. If we take Argentina, this is example of a country where relationships are important. That's why it's appropriate to discuss business matters during dinner. In other country, Egypt, again, you have been invited to a meal at a family home. And, you know, it's interesting example, at the end of the meal, you are very full. Your hostess offer you more food. What should you do in this situation? What do you think? Politely refuse, accept and eat everything on your plate, accept and take a small bite, accept and ask if you can take it with you. What do you think? I'm sorry. It's a tricky question. In different cultures, there are different rules what to do at the end of dinner. B, okay, let's check. No, it's C. Thank you for your feedback. So it's you should accept and take a small bite. It will be okay. And you know, this tradition is appropriate for the most of the Middle East. If you will be offered more food, and it's a good good decision for this situation. If we take another example, it's business gifts. You know, it's also rather tricky one because it's heavily influenced by different traditions. Yeah, if you take South Korea, what do you think? So this case, yeah, you present a gift to a business associate to thank him for his hospitality. He refuses to accept the gift. What should you do in this situation? Dear colleagues, dear participants, what do you think? Let's imagine you are now in South Korea and you have this situation. What would you do in this situation? Could you please write A, B, or C? Or I can answer by myself. Okay, I saw we have A, no, the right answer is B. Insist he takes the gift until it is accepted. It's rather specific answer. Yeah, not, you know, maybe not logical, but again, it's culture. Yeah, it's tradition. And in South Korea, expect some resistance when giving gifts. Not accepting a gift right away is considered good manners, but persistence is key. You should do it again. It's, I suppose, interesting example of cross-cultural differences in business communication. So we have mentioned that it's interesting, but it's tricky also. Let's try to understand what is cross-cultural communication. And in this situation, I propose to start from the beginning. What is communication? You know, of course, the right answer, communication is a process, but it's very broad answer, yeah? You know, we communicate a lot of time during our life, and there are huge amount, of different types of communication, yeah? Today we have communication. For example, when you are chatting with your friend, it's also communication. When, for example, it's international negotiations between countries in the UN, or I don't know, in the EU, it's also communication. So it's a process. We can say that it's universal process, but also we should mention different channels of communication. Yeah, you can see them on the screen. Yeah, and it's interesting and it's very important to stress that communication is connected with development of society. Yeah, of course, development of society influence very much this process. So there is classical definition of communication. Please pay your attention that there is very interesting like science theory, communication theory, we can say, and it's rather interdisciplinary one, because, you know, representatives of different sciences, they took part in this research, communication research. It can be, for example, political science, it can be marketing, it can be management, economy, and so on. But there is classical definition, which is appropriate for any kind of communication. So it's a process, okay, whereby information is enclosed in a package, channel, and imparted by a sender to a receiver. A sender to a receiver using some medium. And the receiver then decodes the message and gives the sender a feedback. You know, during our today lecture, again, it's a kind of communication. I am a sender of information, you are receivers, and I ask you for feedback. You know why I'm ask you? Because feedback, it's a signal that you understand what I mean. No, if, for example, I ask something, you can say yes or no, or you can say I understand, or it can be non-verbal feedback, like you nodding your head or you are smiling. It's all examples of feedback. And in this case, I understand that you decode my message in appropriate way. Yeah, I encode it and you decode, so you understand or understood. That's why feedback, as for me, is a crucial element of any communication. And this scheme, maybe you have already seen this scheme, but I like it very much. Let's pay a few minutes to it. It's a scheme of communication from sender to receiver. So sender encoding information or message, then decoding, and receiver got it, and feedback, you know. So communication is always a cycle from sender to receiver, and then vice versa, from receiver to sender, because I ask you something, you say something, and I can react. And please pay your attention to this element of communication process. It is noise. What do you think? What is noise? Do you have an idea what it can be? Noise. It's a good idea or not very in communication? No, I suppose not very. It can be, for example, physical noise, something then that, I'm sorry, distort information or distract your attention. For example, you have a phone call during lecture, yeah, it is a noise because it's something that that is distracting your attention from lecture, yeah. And of course, we should try always decrease the level of noise, but please pay your attention that it's not impossible to have no noise at all. You know, it's impossible. Even if I tell you something that is very important for you, yeah, something very interesting, and I got your attention, yeah, it's maybe the best idea to eliminate noise, yeah, to provide you with important and interesting information. In this case, you are hearing me and you are going not to distract. But even in this case, there is always noise, because, you know, you can think about something, you can, you know, ask something another person, and so on. There is noise. Again, it's not impossible to have no noise at all, but it is possible to decrease the level of noise. And as I have already mentioned, providing receiver with interesting and useful information is the best idea to eliminate noise. And as we have already mentioned, if there is feedback, it is interactive process, yeah, and we can influence it. And also, we have already mentioned that society influences communication. That's why communication, it's not just interaction, it's always social interaction between people. But again, please pay your attention that we can take broad understanding of communication. And in this one, it's not only communication between people. Yeah, it can be communication in some natural process. and so on. But the narrow understanding that it is communication between people. And of course, channels and forms of communication. Again, it's not topic of our today's lecture. That's why we should just mention that there are different forms, and maybe the classical variant, it's verbal and non-verbal communication. And you know, when we are talking about communication, it's very important to choose appropriate channel of communication. And if you don't mind, now we will watch a short video about miscommunication. Yeah, what can happen if we ignore rules of communication, and in this case, if we don't have appropriate communication. Now I'm opening my video. Let's check sound. Is sound is okay, yeah? Dear colleagues, dear participants? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. And of course, I suppose you know this very famous platform, TED-Ed, yeah? Lesson worth sharing, and they provide us with very good video, and I like this one very much. So let's watch, and then if you wish, we will discuss, okay?
Have you ever talked with a friend about a problem, only to realize that he just doesn't seem to grasp why the issue is so important to you? Have you ever presented an idea to a group, and it's met with utter confusion? Or maybe you've been in an argument when the other person suddenly accuses you of not listening to what they're saying at all. What's going on here? The answer is miscommunication, and in some form or another, we've all experienced it. It can lead to confusion, animosity, misunderstanding, or even crashing a multi-million-dollar probe into the surface of Mars. The fact is, even when face-to-face with another person, in the very same room and speaking the same language, human communication is incredibly complex. But the good news is that a basic understanding of what happens when we communicate can help us prevent miscommunication. For decades, researchers have asked what happens when we communicate. One interpretation, called the transmission model, views communication as a message that moves directly from one person to another, similar to someone tossing a ball and walking away. But in reality, this simplistic model doesn't account for communication's complexity. Enter the transactional model, which acknowledges the many added challenges of communicating. With this model, it's more accurate to think of communication between people as a game of catch. As we communicate our message, we receive feedback from the other party. Through the transaction, we create meaning together. But from this exchange, further complications arise. It's not like the Star Trek universe, where some characters can Vulcan mind meld, fully sharing thoughts and feelings. As humans, we can't help but send and receive messages through our own subjective lenses. When communicating, one person expresses her interpretation of a message, and the person she's communicating with hears his own interpretation of that message. Our perceptual filters continually shift meanings and interpretations. Remember that game of catch? Imagine it with a lump of clay. As each person touches it, they shape it to fit their own unique perceptions based on any number of variables, like knowledge or past experience, age, race, gender, ethnicity, religion, or family background. Simultaneously, every person interprets the message they receive based on their relationship with the other person and their unique understanding of the semantics and connotations of the exact words being used. They could also be distracted by other stimuli, such as traffic or a growling stomach. Even emotion might cloud their understanding. And by adding more people into a conversation, each with their own subjectivities, the complexity of communication grows exponentially. So as the lump of clay goes back and forth from one person to another, reworked, reshaped, and always changing, it's no wonder our messages sometimes turn into a mush of miscommunication. But luckily, there are some simple practices that can help us all navigate our daily interactions for better communication. 1. Recognize that passive hearing and active listening are not the same. Engage actively with the verbal and nonverbal feedback of others and adjust your message to facilitate greater understanding. 2. Listen with your eyes and ears, as well as with your gut. Remember that communication is more than just words. 3. Take time to understand as you try to be understood. In the rush to express ourselves, it's easy to forget that communication is a two-way street. Be open to what the other person might say. And finally, 4. Be aware of your personal perceptual filters. Elements of your experience, including your culture, community, and family, influence how you see the world. Say, this is how I see the problem, but how do you see it? Don't assume that your perception is the objective truth. That'll help you work towards sharing a dialogue with others to reach a common understanding together.
So, dear participants, we can see here is we have already mentioned that communication, it's really challenging process, yeah. From the one hand, from the other hand, it's interesting one. But if we take also cultural background, yeah, cultural context, it becomes more important and more difficult. Cultural differences, they influence very much, because what is the problem? Yes, the sender of the message and the receiver of this one are from different cultures and different backgrounds, have different backgrounds. Yeah, you have seen in this video about perceptual filters, yeah, and culture, as for me, is the main perceptual filter if we are talking about cross-cultural communication. That's why we should take into account all these peculiarities, and if we can, whether we can take verbal or non-verbal communication, it's always connected with culture. If we take verbal communication, again, it's first of all language, yeah, but not only one language, first of all. And if we take non-verbal communication, it's heavily influenced by culture. And it's interesting if we compare like amount of information which we can have due to verbal or non-verbal communication, you can see that more than 90% of information, you see, 93% yeah, we get by non-verbal communication or channels of non-verbal communication, yeah. That's why it's important to understand. From the one hand, this percentage might be overestimated, but non-verbal codes have a fundamental role in communication. I suppose you agree with that. And it can be non-verbal communication: body language, facial expression, gestures, space. Yeah, we have mentioned today that, for example, if you take Brazil, it's a good idea to have close space between two people. If you take, for example, Ukraine, which I represent now, yeah, it's not a good idea to have close space between people who, for example, who are not friends, not relatives. If maybe it's not a doctor, yeah, it's only appropriate for these categories of people to have this close distance. For other people, it's not normal, in Ukraine, I mean. But again, if you take other countries, it's different approach. So let's just pay attention for some examples of non-verbal communication in cultural aspect. Yeah, no, I like this picture very much, you know, because there are obvious different examples for different cultures. And culture influence our communication style, and we should understand well what we are going to do while communicating with people from other countries. Facial expression, yeah, because, you know, it's interesting, example, yeah, that if we take smiling, it's universal signal in any country. Yeah, when we are smiling, it can be and will be interpreted at the same way in all countries. It's the same. It's something positive, yeah, that we are open and so on. But all other gestures and facial expression, other ones, they can be interpreted in a different way in different countries. And for example, smiling, yeah, in the United States, I suppose you have heard about American Smile. Yeah, it's specific one of smile, very open one. So if we take this universal facial expression as smiling, it can differ in different countries. And another example, I don't know, maybe you have heard something about high context culture and low context culture. I want you to provide with some information about this difference. It's really very interesting, and you can feel this difference very clearly. You can feel it. So let's analyze. Low context culture. It's a culture in which people communicate explicitly. They rely less on context and non-verbal cues and instead convey meaning more directly. So if you are communicated with the person from a low context culture, you should explain everything. You should say everything, explaining, giving examples, going specific in details, and so on, because they have low context. Yeah, and there is a list of countries, examples. Yeah, the US, the UK. You can see it's first of all European countries and North American countries, and plus Australia and New Zealand. But I suppose well, yes, that they are heavily influenced by Western countries, yeah, because of history and so on. In even language, yes, they have English language. So in these countries, we should use explicit language, direct communication, and we should be rational and formal. Yeah, everything should be clear. And if we take opposite one, high context culture, it's implicit communication. If we are talking about high context culture, I suppose your country is example of high context culture, Indonesia, I mean. And if we are communicated with you, we should use implicit communication. We shouldn't explain everything in details. It can be more emotions in communication and so on. Dear colleagues, do you agree with such explanations that your country is more high context culture or not? Very well. What do you think? Do you agree with this theory? Because you are representatives of this culture. There is examples of such countries which have the same culture with you. Implicit communication, indirect, and so on. Oh, I have feedback. If you don't mind, can I read it? Yeah, from chat. So what are some key considerations into the national peculiarities of business communication that should be addressed when operating in a global business environment, and how can understand that cultural nuance enhance effective cross-cultural communication? Can I answer it once? Yeah, this question, or at the end? Yeah, okay. So as I have already mentioned, from the one hand we are talking about global environment, yeah, but from the other hand, we should understand which country our partner is representing. If we take again, it's like a stereotype like global business, because it's influenced heavily by Western culture. If we take influence on the United States and European countries. But I don't agree with it. We should take into account peculiarities of all culture. And if you are going, for example, to have negotiations with Ukrainian, you should understand our mentality, our culture, and so on. And if you're going to have communication with partners, I don't know, from India, it's another example. Of course, it's easier for you to communicate with cultures, with people who have maybe not the same, but close culture, yeah, for you. But from the one hand, the second part of your question, yes, that how can understanding those cultural nuances enhance effective cross-communication? It really does, because we have already watched video about wrong communication. For example, if you do something wrong, if you not follow these rules, you have negative effect at once. Yeah, so it's really does work. It's the second part of your question, and I suppose I have already answered the first part. Yes, that we should take not global culture. As for me, global culture doesn't exist. If you heard something about global culture, it's just Western approach. It's about Western values that are dominating. You know, we will have another lecture and we will discuss a culture. Yeah, maybe next year in January, if I'm not mistaken, and we will discuss it. You know, when Western values, they are dominating because of different reasons, because of history, because of English as a global language, and so on. But it does not work if we are talking about other countries, for example, like Eastern countries and so on. We should pay attention to peculiarities for every specific country. So am I answering, or you have, yeah, if you wish, you can write other question, or at the end of our communication, we can continue. So we have discussed it's Zero's example, yeah. We should decide, is it high context or low context culture? Because, you know, if we take the second part of your question, for example, you are going to communicate with a person from Brazil, it's a high context country, and you shouldn't explain everything, you shouldn't take details, specific, and so on. It's not interesting for them. But if you take European countries like Germany or the United States, if you are talking about North America, yeah, they are a classical low context country, low context culture country, and in this case, you should explain everything. If you don't mind, I also want you to show another video about high and low context culture. Because, you know, as for me, it's one of the most important criteria if we take business communication, you know, because when you are negotiating something, it's important to decide, should we take all details, or maybe if we are talking about countries with high context is not a good idea. So let's watch, and if you wish, we can discuss.
The context of a situation depends on who you are communicating with, where you are, what you are communicating about, and why you are communicating in the first place. In low context cultures, the way people communicate doesn't vary so much. It tends to be more formal, and people focus on the subject matter rather than the person they are communicating with. In a business setting, problems and differences are often dealt with early on. Once an agreement has been reached, the details are often recorded and written down. In low context cultures, detailed contracts are an essential part of doing business. Once a contract is signed, it can rarely be changed, and it is used to settle any disagreements that might arise in the future. In high context cultures, the focus is on the people involved. Relationships are a key part of communication. When doing business, people remain flexible and change can happen at any time. Problems are often put to one side and only dealt with when absolutely necessary.
Okay, so let's continue. You can see my presentation, yeah? Thank you. Eye contact, another tricky one. What, when we are communicating with people from different countries, we do not always understand what to do with our eye contact, yeah? Because it's can show in interest in another person. And in some countries, making a lot of eye contact convey honesty, while avoiding eye contact is seen as a kind of dishonest. Yeah, if you take, for example, Western countries like European countries, North America, they have this eye contact, but it's not very intensive. But they should have it. And if you take, for example, Latin American countries, they have rather intensive one. And from European countries, we can mention Italy and Spain. For this country, it's a good idea to have intensive eye contact, or Greece also. And if you take Eastern countries, it's not always a good idea have permanent eye contact. Yeah, so also it depends. Yeah, as I have already mentioned, it can be a opposite view. This culture believes that making a lot of eye contact is insulting and sign of aggression. So it's important and tricky question about eye contact. Formality, it's another example of classification of different cultures. We have mentioned, yes, that cultures, they have so many differences. Yeah, that's why we have a huge amount of classification of different cultures. And in today's lecture, we'll discuss only some of them. It's not possible to analyze all classification of cultures, even if we are going to communicate, I don't know, not 2, but 4 hours and more. That's why I take only the main ones, main criteria. Formality is the next one. It can be formal or informal cultures. And informal culture assumes that everyone is equal, and it's their characteristic. And if we are talking about formal cultures, it's more about rules, about hierarchy, and so on. Touch, as I have already mentioned, it can be contact or touch cultures, and people are expected to touch each other when they are speaking and stand close to each other. For other countries, it's not appropriate. It's so-called non-contact or non-touch cultures. And please pay your attention that if, for example, you are from contact culture and your partner from non-contact culture, it can be really a problem, yeah, because you get used to have close distance from the one hand, and but your partner didn't, yeah, and they think that it is inappropriate, pushy, and even aggressive one. So we should pay attention to it. And there is examples of contact and non-contact cultures. I suppose your country is more non-contact. I mean, Indonesian one, Ukrainian one, as I have already mentioned, too, is non-contact culture. But if it is Arab culture, Southern Europeans, again, it is Italy, Spain, Greece, and Latin Americans, they are very emotional, and they want to have close distance even when they are communicated with strangers. It's not a problem to have close distance. It's vice versa. It's a good idea for them. And so culture, I have already mentioned communication, cross-cultural communication. And if we take culture, it's the basic concept of this communication, cross-cultural. And as we have communication theory, it's a broad topic of study, of research. From the other hand, we have cultural study. It's again important one, and there are a lot of different theories and so on. Again, as I have already mentioned, we will discuss it maybe during our other lecture if you wish, but in this situation we should just mention, and you can see on the slide, yes, that there are different elements of culture. It's so-called culture wheel. You can see greeting community, community, knowledge, language, traditions, arts, food and drink, values, of course, at the heart of this phenomenon. And also, please pay your attention. It's very important that culture, it's something that it's not given by nature. So our culture depends of our socializing process. So if, for example, we are born in one country and we have childhood in this country, for example, we will have culture of this country, or our parents can influence our culture while we are children. But the main idea that culture is not something given by nature. It's social characteristic which we have. And as I have already mentioned, at the beginning, cultural understanding of the world ultimately affects our style of communication, the words we speak, and our behavior as a whole. And there is one more important question: what is intercultural competence? Yeah, there is a specific term which we use when we want to describe what skills do we have. Yeah, if we are talking about a person who is ready to communicate, effectively communicate in globalized world. And in this case, we are talking about this specific phenomenon, intercultural competence. So it's ability to function effectively across culture, yeah, to think, to act appropriately, and of course communicate appropriately, taking into account our own cultural background, and cultural backgrounds of other persons. And as we have already mentioned, it is really valuable asset in increasingly globalized world. You know, there are often different lists of most valuable skills. You know, they are published by different magazines, by different, I don't know, agencies, and so on. And please pay your attention that intercultural competence always in this list. Again, because of objective reasons, because of globalization and other important features. And I also want to show you this this video about intercultural communication and why it is important. And also, please pay your attention. It's topic of our today's lecture. It's of course business communication and national peculiarities of business communication. But except business communication, of course, we can say communication at personal level is also influenced heavily by our culture.
It's a big world full of difference and diversity. How you see others is influenced by your own cultural perspective, and how others see you is influenced by their cultural perspective. What happens when you speak? Do people from other cultures understand you in the way you intended? And what happens with different cultures in the workplace? How rigid or flexible is their approach to rules? Is formal or informal behaviour expected? And how do different cultures approach timekeeping? In today's global business environment, it is essential to learn how to navigate across different cultural landscapes. You need a good set of tools to do this. You need an understanding of how different cultures trade and do business, an insight into how different cultures communicate, and a clear idea of how different cultures manage people. To be a savvy global traveller, you need to be willing to undertake the journey of understanding other cultures. Develop cultural intelligence so you can communicate confidently across cultures.
So it's really important, and I like this video because they showed that it is important in different aspects. It's so-called intercultural competence. You know, we have a rather popular one concept, emotional intelligence. Yeah, it's like innovative form of intelligence, and even we have already intercultural intelligence as a specific type of intelligence. It's because it's really influence our behavior and so on. So I propose to continue with analyzing of peculiarities of international business negotiation process. Why negotiation? You know, as for me, negotiation is a very interesting example of communication. Yeah, you know, we have clear roles. Yeah, in this communication process, we have different interests. Yeah, part one, part the second one, and different teams, we can say. Yeah, if we use team approach, and it's a kind of communication, very intensive one. And again, let's take cultural background. Yeah, we have already mentioned, for example, high context and low context culture. Let's imagine that people who are negotiating, they are from different countries, yeah, from different cultures, high and low context, and they try to influence each other. And in this case, they must use different methods, because, you know, if they, for example, from high context culture, they shouldn't use their own methods. They should use methods of influence, I mean influential methods, which are appropriate for low context culture. I have another question in chat. How do national peculiarities in business communication impact cross-cultural interaction, and what strategy can be employed to navigate and leverage this difference for successful international business relationship? Okay, thank you very much for your question. The main strategy, no, I suppose there are two steps: to understand your own culture, yeah, understand your own peculiarities, and like watch yourself, because, you know, very often when we are communicating, we don't always realize why we behave ourselves in a particular way, because, you know, we live in our country, we communicate with people with the same culture, yeah, and, you know, it's normal for us to communicate in such a specific way. But when you are communicating with your business partners from another countries, you should like observe yourself and understand peculiarities of your own behavior. It's the first step. And the second step, it's, as I have already mentioned, to take into account peculiarities of your business partners, because, you know, you can use your methods, which, for example, I mean methods of communication, which you are using during your communication with partners from your country, you know, but you can do it, but it's not effective. It's not if it does not influence their partners from other countries. So the second step, it is to understand peculiarities, features, yeah, of your partners, of your foreign partners, and try to influence them using it, you know. And also, of course, it is important in the aspect of respect. Yeah, when you understand the culture of your partner, business partner from other country, yeah, you show respect. For example, how to greet, yeah, is it appropriate to give business gift or no? We have already mentioned it's connected with dress, differs, it can differ, yeah, differences. It's connected with signing contract, yeah, if it is a partner from high context culture, yeah, you shouldn't sign all details. And if it is low context culture, you should do it. Am I answering, or you have maybe more question, or I can continue? Yeah. Okay, at the end of my lecture, we'll have special time, yeah, I suppose, for answering questions. And you can ask if you wish. Okay, thank you. So negotiation, yeah, if you take negotiation process, international one, Now, first of all, negotiation, it just definition of negotiation. It's a process that takes place between two or more parties, and the main idea that they have conflicting interests from the one hand, yeah, but from the other hand, they should have a common decision. So this negotiation should lead to a joint action. From the one hand, conflicting interests, from the other hand, joint decision. And again, let's take cultural background which influence. So if you take international definition of international business negotiation, it's deliberative interaction of two or more social units originated from different nations. And again, if we take a negotiation process, the main idea is that the values of participants of negotiations are different. It's the answer for your questions, yeah? If you are going to negotiate with, I don't know, people from French, you should understand what are important for them. What do they want to achieve? Because, you know, for one culture, it's important just to win, just to have everything. It's rather difficult partner for communication, yeah. And for other countries, it's Eastern countries very often. Such countries, they value relationship, you know, and they maybe not so difficult partner for negotiation. But in any case, we should understand clearly, and again, this answer for your question, that different cultures have different values. What is important for you is not always important for your business partner, for foreigner, yeah? And the right answer, just to understand in this specific case, you know, so if you are going to have your negotiation with partner from specific country, you should pay attention to this specific country. And I propose you to watch one more video about negotiation, and they mean, I don't know, dear participants, have you heard something about cultural iceberg? No, cultural
when you negotiate
iceberg. It's a model, very popular one, very influential. And so let's watch this short video and then discuss.
with any person, you're really dealing with an iceberg. Bear with me. We're not saying that they sank the Titanic, necessarily. We're saying there's a small amount you can see and a lot that's hidden. With people, what's visible is their behaviours. You can directly observe how a person acts, the way they speak, the things they say, their arguments. What's underneath is who they really are, why they're acting that way, why they're saying those things and making those arguments. Things like attitudes and values, assumptions, traditions, beliefs. What you'll notice is that within a given culture, there'll be certain similarities, certain internalised common interests. They're subjective, of course, and they don't always manifest the same way. Two people from the same culture can be vastly different. The trick when negotiating is to understand the sources of these cultural differences. For example, the US is typically a pretty individualistic country. Competitive, me-first culture. That's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just how it's often perceived. That doesn't mean that every American is like that, or even that all aspects of US culture are that way. It's just a mentality. Conversely, several East Asian cultures are considered more collectivist. There's thought of being a greater concern for getting along and cooperating. It's not that there's no competitiveness, but there's a greater onus on group benefit. Again, doesn't have to be true for everyone and everything, it's a perceived cultural undertone. Sticking with these examples, you could also say, though you may disagree, that Western cultures are more egalitarian, whereas the East is more hierarchical. You could say that Americans have a culture of direct communication, while other cultures may be a little more indirect. So how do these things affect negotiation? Well, of all these hidden parts of the iceberg can shape the visible parts. You might be arguing with a visible part when the real differences are cultural. Let's have a totally oversimplified example. Let's say you suggest meeting up for a drink in a bar to go over the details of your contract. Your prospect says, "No, I don't want to do that." You're thinking, "Oh wow, they hate the contract." But maybe they're simply from a culture that disapproves of alcohol. There's a phenomenon called ethnocentrism, which is a tendency to believe that everyone thinks or should think like you do, and judging them based on your own values. It's similar to affiliation bias, where you associate things linked to your own cultural grouping as right or better. Neither are the best mindset for negotiations. They're the biggest challenge to overcome when negotiating across culture. They can result in resorting to stereotyping, rather than responding to individuals. So, how should you negotiate?
So you can see, yes, it really it is important to understand which culture are you going to negotiate, and you know, as in this video they mentioned ethnocentricity, yeah, ethnocentric people, when such people, they tend to judge everything from the position of their own culture. And as I have already mentioned, the first step for preparing for effective cross-cultural communication is to observe yourself and get rid of ethnocentricity. And in this case, it will be effective. And also, they mentioned in this video about Eastern countries, collectivist country. We will discuss it later today, and I can say that Indonesia is one of the most collectivist country in this list. Yeah, so it can be so-called individualistic country. Classical example is the United States of America, and your country is classical example of collectivist country. So let's continue with our presentation. I like this model very much. You have already seen it in the video, yeah, cultural iceberg. And the main idea that, you know, there are a lot of really fundamental, essential characteristic of people. They are invisible, they are not observable. Yeah, you can see, for example, dress of people. Yeah, you can see what they are eating, what do they behave yourself, but it's only visible element, and you can see all other, they are underwater. Yeah, in this iceberg model, it's such things like family, values, history, ideas, beliefs, and so on. And if we come back to negotiation, negotiators have unique perspective of negotiation, leading to different style. I suppose you have already heard a lot about different national styles of communication, like German style, French style, Indonesian style, Chinese style, and so on. And again, it's connected with culture, of course. And it's the main idea to understand other values. And in this case, we can understand our partner, we can influence him or her or them during our cross-cultural communication. And also we can express ourselves clearly, understanding our own culture. So cultural values can influence international business negotiation, and significant, we have already mentioned, in what's interesting also, in unexpected way, you know, when you just don't understand what is going on, because something invisible like cultural value influences behavior of your partner. And there are, for example, 5 outcome orientations that vary different countries, cultures or countries: partnership, contract, profit, winning, and the time expectation of the negotiation. Yeah, you can see that it's rather essential characteristics of any negotiation, and we should understand these peculiarities. As an example, Chinese and Korean negotiators, for example, look for a relationship, and whereas American negotiations, they, as we have already mentioned, they just want to win, and they don't satisfy with the win-win settlement. Yeah, the more important for them to have everything as a result. Yeah, but if you take Eastern countries, such countries tend to be more, we can say, collectivist one, and also look for relationship, as we have already mentioned. Another example, Americans consider a signed contract, as a definitive set of requirements that strictly binds the two sides. Chinese negotiator often consider a relationship as the appropriate result. You know, they have the same negotiation, but the different results from the same negotiations. As we have already mentioned, the US or UK, it's about winning over the other party is the best result. And the main idea is that different cultural system can provide different negotiation style. And the main conclusion that one should start preparing for international negotiation by learning this culture. It's again answer for your question. You know, it's not, there is no like universal guide how to behave yourself in international negotiation. It's impossible, have such universal guide, again, because of different cultures. Yeah, it depends on specific culture, and you should prepare for communication with partner from this specific culture. And Hofstede cultural dimension theory, maybe you have heard about something about Hofstede. It's very influential researcher, and he proposed this cultural dimension theory. We can say it's the most popular one, and we will analyze now this criteria, and then we will compare Indonesia and Ukrainian cultures. I suppose, you know, while I was preparing to our today's meeting, yeah, I had some doubts, yeah. Should I describe Indonesian culture, business culture? I suppose it's not a good idea to describe for you Indonesian business culture, because you know better, of course, than me, yeah. But from the other hand, I suppose I should pay attention to your culture, business culture, and I decided to do comparison. I will take Ukrainian culture and culture of your country, and we will compare these two cultures. I suppose it will be more interesting for you. And in this case, we are going to use this specific theory. As I have already mentioned, it's the most influential one. You can see this theory in all books connected with management. I mean, if we are talking about business communication management, also it's rather influential theory in international marketing and other sciences. So Hofstede, it's surname of the scientist, Geert Hofstede is the full name, and he developed this theory to understand the differences across the culture. It's interesting, yes, that this study was conducted at the end of 60s, at the beginning of 70s. So we can say from the one hand, it's not so recent study, yeah. But from the other hand, you know, it's interesting that there is no analog, yeah, no equivalent to this theory. Up to now, this theory is the most popular one. We have, of course, other theories, like we have already mentioned, high context and low context culture. It's more modern theory. But the basis, it is these 6 categories developed by Hofstede. So could you please pay your attention to these 6 categories? We will discuss them in detail. First one, power distance index. Next one, collectivism versus individualism. We have already mentioned it, yes, that your country is collectivist one. And if you take opposite country, in this case, it is the United States, is one of the most individualistic country all over the world. Next one, rather interesting one, uncertainty avoidance index. Next one, femininity versus masculinity. What does it mean? You know, maybe it's stereotypical approach, but nevertheless, we can say that we have women's values and men's values. For example, for women, it's important to build relationship, and for men, the most important for men, for them, it's most important to achieve success. Yeah, we can say that it's the most important value for men. Again, maybe it's stereotypical approach, and women can also have such goals. But if you take this like a theory, So in the first case, femininity society, yeah, such women's values are dominating, and the opposite situation we have in the masculine society. And the two last ones are short-term versus long-term orientation, and restraint versus indulgence. So let's discuss, yeah. And also we can use such element of analysis as comparison, yeah. And we will do it today using examples of your countries and Ukraine. So let's take first one, power distance index. This dimension expresses the degree to which the less powerful members of a society accept and expect the power is distributed unequally. So if it is normal for people, that power is distributed unequally, we can say that it is power distance high level of power distance index, yeah. So in this case, there are clear roles, who is the boss, yeah, and we understand it clearly, who is the main person. And it's interesting that employees in such cultures, in cultures with high level of power distance index, they are going to have instructions, you know. They say, I want to have clear instructions because I want to understand what to do. It is power distance index, high level of this index. And if we take opposite countries with low level of power distance index, you know, there is no always clear who is the main person. There is no such clear roles. Yeah, there are no such clear roles. And in these societies, employees, they are not expecting to have direct instruction. They understand themselves what to do. I suppose it's rather interesting difference between these two countries. So if you take a large degree of this power distance, it is hierarchical order in which everybody has a place. And, you know, it is normal for everybody. For example, if you take Ukraine, it's our country, due to Hofstede, it's a country with a large degree of power distance. I don't know, I agree or not. In some case, in some situation, I can agree, but not always. And if you take society with low power distance, again, it's not normal for such societies if there is hierarchy and so on. Next one, maybe it's more easy to understand, individualism versus collectivism, the second criteria. So it's another name for this culture, it's we or I. If I is at the center, it's individualistic society. And if my partners, my friends, my colleagues, the whole society, yeah, we is the main idea, it is collectivist society. Yeah, so collectivism represents a preference tightly knit framework, and if we are talking about individualist society, it's loosely knit framework. And as I have already mentioned, if it is collectivist society, we are talking about we, not I. Next one, masculinity versus femininity. It's about competitiveness, first of all. If it is competitive society, where competitiveness is one of the most valued, it's masculine society. If there is feminine society, it's about cooperation, modesty, caring for the weak, and quality of life. In this case, we have feminine society. Next one, uncertainty avoidance index. In this case, we are talking about future. You know, for some culture, it's very difficult to cope with uncertainty. So we can say Ukraine, we have very high level of uncertainty avoidance index. That means that we try to prepare for the future. We try to plan everything. We want to be ready. Yeah, and if you take another opposite countries with not high level of uncertainty avoidance index, they, you know, like more easy. They are not preparing for the future. They say, so it be in some way, we shouldn't pay our resources for preparation for the future. It's another variant of culture, yeah? So culture exhibiting strong countries or culture exhibiting strong uncertainty avoiding index maintains the strict codex of belief and behavior, and weak uncertainty avoidance index society, they are more relaxed and more flexible. Next one, long-term orientation versus short-term one. It's connected again with future, but also with the past. You know, if we are talking about long-term orientation countries, they are looking for new perspectives, and their history is not so important for them. And if we take short-term orientation countries, their history is very important for them, and they, of course, in this case, they are more conservative. It is so-called short-term orientation country, or we can say it is normative country or normative culture country. And if there is a country with long-term orientation, it is so-called pragmatic country, because they are looking for new opportunities and so on. And you can see on this slide, yeah, these differences between two types of countries. As I have already mentioned, it can be normative or pragmatic countries. It's another name for it. And the last one, indulgence versus restraint. Indulgence stands for a society that allows relatively gratifications, free gratification of basic and natural human drives related to enjoying life and having fun. So they, again, more easy, they are more relaxed, and they have no strict rules. And we have already mentioned, yeah, for example, problem of time. Yeah, and if we take indulgent society, they are not strict about time. You know, you can be late in such society. It's normal, because, you know, you are relaxed and you are not going to rush and so on. And if you take restrained society, like, for example, Germany or Switzerland, we have mentioned, yeah, for them, it's very important to follow rules. And, you know, if we have timetable, we should follow this timetable, yeah? It's opposite approach to the problem, yeah? And I want to show you a site. One moment. You can see my screen, yeah, site. Yeah, website. So it's so-called the Culture Factor Group, and we have interesting opportunity to use it's free for you to use country comparison tool. What we can do, we can take any country, for example, Indonesia, Ukraine, or we can, I don't know, add Austria, for example, and we will have comparison of all three countries. But Austria is not very interesting for us today. Let's take Indonesia and Ukraine. So we have these categories, but just pay your attention that in this site, they have another title for the criteria femininity and masculinity. They say it's motivation towards achievement and success. It's the same. We can say that the third criteria, it is femininity versus masculinity. So let's analyze. You can see that orange color, it's Indonesia, and blue color, it's Ukraine. Let's compare, if you don't mind. So if we take power distance, we can see that our country, Ukraine, I mean, which I represent, a very high level of power distance, almost 100%. As I have already mentioned, I didn't fully agree with it, but they say that maybe it is connected with our history. They say, Hofstede says that Ukraine is post-Soviet country. That's why we have this high level of power distance. But I suppose we have a lot of changes, and I don't agree that up to now, we are not post-Soviet country at all. We have really transformation in our society, but nevertheless, due to Hofstede, we have high level of power distance. It's connected with history, and again, you remember, yes, that his research, it's not like recent, but nevertheless, some tendency we have. But again, I have already mentioned, I don't agree that we post-Soviet country. No, we have already European country and moving into the European Union. Individualism, please pay your attention to this very interesting result. I have already mentioned, yeah, that due to home study, your country, Indonesia, has one of the lowest score in this category. You can see only 5%. If we take Ukraine, it's in the middle. Next one, masculinity versus femininity. You can see that your country more masculine than Ukraine. Yeah, we have a low, I mean Ukraine, we have a low level of masculinity. You have middle level. Yeah. Next one, very interesting again, uncertainty avoidance index. As I have already mentioned, Ukraine has one of the highest level of uncertainty avoidance, and your countries have middle level. Next one, long-term orientation. Yeah, we can say that you have a rather low score in this category. So in this case, we can say that you are normative society, and for you, history, your traditions are very important. For Ukraine, you can see it's in the middle. And indulgence, again, if we take your country, it's a rather low level of indulgence, so we can say that you are a restrained society. But if we take Ukraine, it's even lower level, yeah? So we're very restrained society due to Hofstede. And I propose you, if you wish to use this free online instrument, and it's interesting, you know, that if we choose, for example, criteria, we can see explanation, yeah? For example, yeah, power distance, they say that you scores high in this dimension, and they say that being independent of hierarchy and equal rights between power holders and non-power holders, employees expect to be told what to do and when, control is expected and managers are respected for their position, communication is direct, in negative feedback hidden. It's examples of country with high level of power distance. And Ukraine, very high level, as we have already mentioned. Individualism, it's interesting example for you, yeah, that you have super low score in this category. That's why you are 100% or 95% collectivist society. What does it mean? Yeah, a high preference for a strongly defined social framework in which individuals are expected to conform to the ideals of the society. The role of family, yeah, due to Hofstede, family is very important for you. There are different examples. If one wishes to marry, it is important to meet a woman's family, because the family is so important to her. And another example connected with children. Children in your country are committed to their parents, as are the parents committed to them all their growing lives. Their desire to make their parents' life easier, and so on. Yeah, we can say that it's characteristics of collectivist society. Next one, motivations towards achievement and success, or it is masculinity and femininity. So Indonesia scores on this dimension, and thus is considered a society with low motivation towards achievement and success. No, middle one, they say it's low, and for example, they explains it. Ukraine have even lower level. Uncertainty avoidance index, we feel very much, I mean Ukraine, feel very much threatened by ambiguous situation. For example, presentation either not prepared when negotiations are being started and the focus is on the relationship building, or extremely detailed and well prepared. Yeah. Also, detailed planning and briefing is very important for us. We want to have background information and so on. If you take Indonesia, you have middle score, yeah, and they say that you also like preparing for future, but not so strictly as Ukrainians. Long-term orientations, we have already mentioned, yes, that you are normative culture. It's not only history, we have mentioned, yeah, it's also about like absolute truth. Yeah, you know, for normative society, it's important to have universal rules what to do in specific situation. And such countries as you also, you have such rules. That's why you are normative society. And also, as we have mentioned, you exhibit great respect for traditions. And we are in the middle. And the last one, indulgence versus restraint. So both of us has a restrained culture, but we have even more restrained culture. So do you have maybe any questions connected with this aspect? Do you agree with Hofstede while I will characterize in your country, or not very, dear participants? What do you think about ideas of Hofstede if we take your country? Do you agree or not very? I have already mentioned my attitude if we take Ukraine. Okay, we have feedback. You agree. Okay, thank you. So Hofstede was right. Examples of national business communication styles. Yeah, we have maybe 15-12 minutes. Let's discuss different examples of national business communication style. Yeah, we have such category as international business customs. But again, don't be confused. It's not like global customs that are universal for everybody. It's just a code of behavior which strictly or heavily influenced by our culture. It's ideas that we should take into account all national peculiarities of our partners. It's the main idea. It's about lateness, handshake firmness, how long you need to spend getting to know someone before driving into business, and so on. It's examples of these elements of international etiquette. And we should adapt. Like we have I have question. What role do cultural nuances play in shaping national peculiarities of business communication, and how awareness? We have already had this question. Should I repeat, or I'm wrong? No.
Yes.
Yes, it's that I should.
Yes, you can answer it, Miss.
Okay, so the main idea to understand your own culture, and the next step to take into account to research, even I can use this term, research peculiarities of business culture of your partners. Yeah, again, you know, there is no universal rules how to be effective in any negotiation. The main idea, it's procedure, it's the process. You should adapt to cultural values of your business partner. But from the other hand, you shouldn't forget about your own cultural behavior and analyze your behavior. It's the main idea. Again, we have begun from it. It's about cultural diversity. We are different, and but it's interesting to communicate because it enrich our own experience, our own life, and so on, communication. So business etiquette or in international business customs, gestures, behavior, and so on. We have already mentioned that it's, I repeat it because, you know, it's classical example. Firm handshake for Americans, and air kisses, for example, for friends. Yeah, we have mentioned it. Greetings. Let's discuss greetings, but if you don't mind, I want you to show short video about different types of greetings. It's interesting that it's so different.
Let us know the ways of greeting in different countries.
can see, yes, it's really so different greetings. Yeah, and again, your communication with your partner is going to begin from greeting, and even at this first stage, it can be a problem, or it can be like positive influence on your partner if you, for example, understand specific of greeting in this foreign country and pay attention to it. If you take greetings and friends, eye contact is mandatory, and also firm handshake is also a good idea for friends. Belgian professional might initially shake hands, so it's not a good idea, might initially, but for them, and they, in this case, they have common features, common nature with France, yeah, and with Italy, but with friends more, it's air kissing on, or air kisses on each cheek. And it's interesting that even during video conference, Belgians, they can use air kisses because it's normal for them, and they want to use it even in virtual communication, not only like traditional one. Germans, as we have already mentioned, they are rather open, but rather straight. They prefer to have straight to the point communication. And so it's not always a good idea to use humor. Again, why? Because humor, it's signal, it's example of high context culture. Because, you know, when you are joking, for example, you not always say everything, I'm sorry, yeah, you just like hint something, and it's an example of high context. Germans, they don't like it, that's why they just can't understand your joke, and it can be problem. The south of Italy, more this business in this region is more about building a friendship relations, so they want direct, high-driving approach should be frowned upon. Business cards we haven't already mentioned, we didn't mention it today, but also it's important one, yeah, important element of business communication, and also it's influenced by our culture. So culture of business cards, yeah, how to do it. And if it is China, yeah, when you offer someone your card, you should do it with both hands. Body language, again, physical contact, like shaking hands, and so on, is considered improper in places like China, Korea, Thailand, and the Middle East. And there is citation from Brazilian. He said that complete invasion of your personal space, you are doing business in Brazil. So it's not just normal for them. It's an ideal variant, but again, if you are from non-contact culture, it can be difficult for you. So if you take Brazil, that it's customary to stand extremely close and use frequent physical contact while taking, and resist the urge to back away, since it is considered disrespectful. It's important, yeah. Dress for success, yeah, so we have already mentioned at the beginning that it can be different national traditions, and also there are different national styles if you take different countries. For example, you can see Australia, formal attire for startups and techniques as conference, and such as jeans and t-shirts and a jacket, so they're not very formal. If only there is, you know, very important issue connected with some very important benefits for them, they can wear proper suit, yeah, but it will be rather rare. Asia, again, if we take Singapore, it's interesting that they are evolving, and if you take their attire, for example, they are similar for Australia. But there is opposite example, China. They are very conservative, and also they are conservative in their dress. So men should wear dark suits and ties. And Women should have high necklines. Most Scandinavian countries, so they even, it can be a rather specific example, but I deliberately use it, because in some Scandinavian countries, they, for example, want or can invite you to sauna, for example. It will be super inappropriate for Chinese partner, but this is tradition of Scandinavian countries. So again, we should take into account it. Next one, we have already begun to analyze dining and socializing. Again, it can be rather tricky one. What should we do? How to eat something? Should we use, for example, fork, or should we eat with hands? And so on. Which topic should we discuss, and so on. Asia, when you are expected to use chopsticks, yeah, so take time to practice in advance. It's also like you must have preparation for it. And how to prepare yourself. Take introduction seriously. We have already mentioned, yes, greetings is important element of communication. Maybe from the one hand, it's not so important, but it is false approach. We should pay attention to greeting, and you show respect for your partner if you understand their greetings. The next one about names and titles. Yeah, again, it can differ in different countries. Even pronunciation, yeah, it can be a tricky one. That's why you should pay attention. Maybe ask somebody who knows language of your partner, of your foreign business partner, how to pronounce name, yeah, and so on, to understand clearly what to say. Because again, you understand it will be rather offensive if you pronounce name of your partner in not a correct way. Next one, where you should address someone by their first name or last name, yeah, and so on. Business cards, for example, in Asian country, business cards are extremely important symbol. Not in a lot of countries, it is extremely important symbol, and it's a good idea again with both hands if we take Asian countries. And if you take some countries like France, for example, it's a good idea to have French translation. If you have your business card in English, they say it's a good idea to have translation in French. Because, in France, people, they pay a lot of attention to their history, to their language, yeah, and, they can speak English, but they prefer to speak French. And in this case, it will be a good idea to translate your business card not only in English, but also in French. Be on time, again, punctuality, it's one of the tricky ones. If you take Central Europe, business meetings generally begin on time. Latin American culture, meetings frequently run later, and it's normal for them, yeah? Regardless of where you do business, you won't go wrong by being on time. Yeah, so we should pay attention to the appointed time and how much time do we need to get there, and so on. And it's a good idea to clarify specific time. For example, if you don't have this specific time, just in the evening, yeah. And this opposite example, stay a while, yeah, so you can be in time or you can be late if it is in Latin American countries. But what about the end of your communication, yeah? Stay a while, yeah? For example, leaving an event early can also be an unintentional sign of disrespect, especially in Asian culture. So you shouldn't leave earlier, because again, it's a sign of disrespect. But in any culture, if even we take another culture, not Eastern culture, in any countries, it is best not to be the first person to leave in any cases. Bring any gift, again, it's a way of showing respect to your host, but again, it depends. Yeah, we have mentioned example of South Korea, yeah, in the beginning of our lecture, and we can say that gift giving is more common in Asian countries, but again, it is in any country people they like to have gifts, but again, there is some national rules which we should follow. Expect to socialize, yeah. So in Asia, in Latin America, socializing out the office is critically important in building our relationship. And we should use body language cues, yeah, when we don't understand something, when we don't know how to behave ourselves in specific environment, which is new for us. So we should observe our hosts and maybe following their behavior. So, dear colleagues, it's all for now, or I can have, what about our time? I suppose I should finish, yeah? Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. Maybe you have questions, I can answer them. Thank you very much. I suppose it was interesting for you, but if you okay, there is attendance link, yeah? I should follow it, yeah?
No, it's okay, just for student.
Okay, thank you. So, dear colleagues, dear participants, do you have any questions? The main idea, please, do you have question? Oh.
Ya, untuk para peserta, jika ada pertanyaan bisa raise hand atau menulis di kolom chat. Oh, okay, we have the question from audience in the YouTube. For first question, what are the key consideration and challenge associated with national peculiarity in business communication, and how can organization effectively navigate and adapt their communication strategy to accommodate diverse cultural norm and expectation? This question from Mr. Tito.
Okay, if I understand correctly, how organization can influence it, yeah?
Yeah, I'm ready. Oh, we have two questions.
Okay, yeah, you know, again, the answer that organization should understand the importance of it, yeah? And, you know, there is one more very important and interesting topic, it's so-called multicultural teams. Yeah, even you know, if it's not international negotiation, even if we take like transnational corporation, yeah, and there are representatives from different countries, and they say that it's very effective when we try to solve problem, yeah, like using skills of different people who are representing different countries. So if we take main considerations, again, we should pay resources to it, yeah, we should spend time, yeah, we should maybe provide our employees with some trainings, yeah, and you know, it is like with foreign language, yeah, we just should speak if we want to have proficiency in language, and it is the same situation in any communication. If you want to be effective communicator, we should develop our skills in practice. That's why the main idea, pay attention to it, and if we are talking about for negotiation from, with representatives of specific country, we should understand their culture. And I have a previous question, how many steps to develop and also attend in the international international business meeting, while we also adapted in the culture of the people from foreign. How many steps? I suppose it's the same, yeah. So understand your own culture and your own uniqueness, yeah, and then pay attention, spend your time for preparation for this communication. You know, happy to give you universal guides, but there is no guide universal. We should just understand importance of it. And during our today lecture, we have discussed different criteria. Yeah, we can use Hofstede, it's the classical theory we can use. And it's impossible to analyze all culture during our lecture. That's why you can get useful, if it will be useful for you, you can get this information from this lecture. Yeah, we have mentioned Asian countries, and also I try to analyze your own culture, but again, I understand you know better than me your culture. That's why I try to compare it with Ukraine using specific research methods. It's Hofstede comparison tool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we don't have no more question again from student. Okay, before I close this event, for all participants, please open your camera. I will take a picture on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, another 1, 1, 2, 3. Smile. Thank you. Thank you for your keen cooperation. Finally, we come to the end of visiting lecture today. We would like to say to Miss Hanna Shcholokova for the
I have
wonderful
difficult name.
information. Yeah, and thank you for sharing your knowledge. We hope this information will be beneficial for all participants. At least we hope to have more collaboration in the future. The visiting lecture for today and here. We hope to see you soon. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you so much for Miss Hanna. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure for me to communicate with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.